I do think if you want a country to be great, you have to have equal opportunity. You have to be willing to invest in your people, and you have to empower the citizens to really believe that they have equal access to opportunity. Right now, I don't think that's the case in the United States, at least not for everybody.
Welcome to Uprising. Each episode looks inside what it takes to lead the most dynamic and successful cultural movements. Some of them in the business world, some in the social realm, some in politics, and some in between, to see why people start uprisings. What gives those initiatives momentum and keeps them going? And most important, what lessons can you learn from these movements and how to apply them to your business and even personal life? Let's explore the secret to sparking movements that move people into action.
Passionate ideas.
Controversial ideas.
Uprising ideas.
The power is now in the hands of anyone.
To start a cultural movement.
Today's Uprising Pod is brought to you by warbyparker.com. Get a free 5-day home try-on at www.warbyparkertrial.com/uprising. 5 pairs, 5 days, 100% free.
So I think many of us have experienced stories like this. So there's this young man, he's grown up in a family, in an agricultural family, been on the farm for many, many, many generations. And then this one child happens to connect with someone who happens to be a teacher, and this child blossoms, grows up, opens his mind, becomes a huge book reader, a great thinker, is educated, and becomes someone who makes a big impact in our world. That's the power of education, and that is the power of helping young people who have the potential to do so much good make an impact in our world. The United States is built on the promise that all men are created equal, but it's been proven time and again that this is not always true. Everyone is not awarded the same possibilities or have the same opportunities available to them. Access to education seems to be at the center of this social inequality. 1.3 million students drop out of school every year. Meanwhile, 75% of all crime is committed by high school dropouts. I mean, those statistics alone should scare the bejesus out of you and show you that there's something wrong that needs to be righted through education and an educational system that works for the people. Our guest today on the Uprising Pod is behind an educational movement as CEO and president of Usher's New Look. Please welcome to the Uprising Pod, Yvette Cook. Thank you so much for joining us, Yvette.
Oh, thank you for inviting me.
Yvette, I love talking with you. We've done it so many times, and I admire what you and your organization does. It's really remarkable. But before we get into everything you're doing at the New Look, I want to start with a big question. What do you stand for as a human being, and what do you stand against?
Well, that's pretty easy. I stand for equality. I've spent a lot of time advocating on behalf of the underserved, and that's underserved across a myriad of communities, and that's not necessarily financially or economically, but just fighting on behalf of individuals that need somebody to advocate for them. And my legacy wishes that somebody's life will be better because of maybe one little thing that I did. So I think that's kind of the positive side. You know, I think it's just really important that we all leave a footprint here when we are gone. And I'd like for my footprint to be that I've helped other people improve their life.
Yvette, I fundamentally believe what you're saying, and I also believe that it's in the best interest of companies to help improve people's lives, because if people live better and a higher quality of life in a better environment with better food and better products, they can live better lives and they can buy more products for a longer period of time, which of course helps the bottom line of companies. So it's in our interest to improve people's lot. So one way that you're helping the underserved is through education, a really important pillar of our society. What do you think the state of education is today in America? What challenges do we face?
Oh, the challenges are massive. It's like, where do I start with that one? There's so many challenges. I think at the base of it, the current system of education, which really came out of the Industrial Revolution, is antiquated and it's outdated. And I think that we're expecting for individuals, especially children, to learn in methods that really don't even resonate with them. So I think from a technological perspective, we've not kept up with technology from the perspective of how we're educating our children and our youth. And I think that if we really want to stay competitive, the United States specifically has fallen so far behind in terms of their level of education in comparison to other countries. I think we need a complete overhaul. I'm really appalled by the fact that there are children that are entering second and third grade who aren't even reading on a kindergarten level. That really bothers me tremendously. Yet many of them manage to make it through high school and still aren't able to read or comprehend beyond a fifth grade level. So I think that the numbers speak for themselves and we have a lot of work to do. The system is broken and it needs to be completely taken down and rebuilt from the ground up.
Wow, it's a big challenge. I mean, I know you have an amazing sense of priorities and a strong, incredible power source inside of you. But where do we start? What would such a rebuild look like? And how would that change America?
Oh, well, I think the outcomes would be very positive. I think the process would be very painful. As Americans, we are entrenched in tradition. And even from a scholar perspective, you think about it, scholars will tell you, well, there's great history. We've always done it this way. And believe you me, I'm big on history. I consider myself somewhat of a historian. But I think that we have to learn from history, so that we can move forward into the future. And I think the future of learning overall is changing right before our eyes. And that includes training and learning in the workforce. That includes career readiness and preparation. And that includes children in primary and secondary education as well. So I think it would be very painful, but it's something that's necessary and we have to do it. It's just a matter of when we do it, but it must happen.
I mean, career readiness and preparation are just, such great ideas. And starting so early in primary school, secondary education, I mean, that's, to me, it sounds like a no-brainer, but of course it's not, but it is so important. I mean, we spend so many years, I'm a parent, and we spend so many years nurturing children from the moment they're born. No wonder it's important to educate them around, what opportunities exist, the right path forward. I mean, and in a way, it's up to society to create those frameworks within which young kids can, see opportunities, which today they're not. And I know that's something you're working towards with Usher's New Look. Can you describe New Look? What is your mission as an organization? What are you doing? And how are you getting involved so that you're actually making the difference that you're talking about?
Sure, absolutely. Well, our mission as an organization started out all around creating this next generation of informed leaders. If you stop and think about it, the youth today are going to make all the decisions for us tomorrow in the future, right? They are our future. And what New Look has done over the last 18 years is work with youth, primarily coming out of what I consider underserved communities. These are communities where they're not playing on a level playing field. And we have worked tirelessly to help level the playing field so that these students can have dreams and aspirations and have the exposure and the accessibility to go on to do great things. So that really is kind of the overarching mission. But what we found in the last few years is that what we're really doing is we're transforming mindsets. Because a lot of our students have limited mindsets based on the zip code they've come out of, based on the school that they've gone to, and to be quite honest with you, sometimes based on the families that they were born into, right? So what we try to do is transform their mindset to be larger and broader and expose them to understanding that there's another way for them to live.
Yvette, I've noticed firsthand. I mean, I've met your students, and they are remarkable. I mean, if anybody out there is interested in New Look, and you should be, you should try to look them up online. And if you're in Atlanta, you should try to visit their center. It is remarkable what these young, brilliant, motivated, and creative, inspiring, confident kids are saying and how they think. I mean, it's really mind-blowing. One way to start a movement or fuel a movement is, of course, to transform mindsets. How are you doing that at New Look?
Well, we have several techniques. We have pretty robust curriculum, and what we start with is helping students identify their spark. What's your passion? What's your purpose? What are your talents? Because believe it or not, listen, I have 3 children of my own, and I wish all of my children could have gone through a program like this. Because sometimes even kids from what I would say more educated household or more privileged still don't necessarily know what they want to do with their lives in their future, right? So we expose them to tools that help them figure out if they don't already know. If they do already know, then we give them exposure. Like we might let them shadow someone like you for a day just to find out what it is that you do and is this really what I want to do, right? So that's number one key, is starting with the spark. We call it igniting the spark. And then the second key is all of the learning and the training that we do is all peer-to-peer led. Because if you think about it, we work with youth from the ages of 14 really to 24, right? Post-college. And if you think about it, a 14 or 15-year-old doesn't want to have yet another adult standing in front of them teaching or preaching them anything, right? But when you put a peer in front of them, someone who's already been where they've been, someone who they can say, oh my gosh, that's me. I could see me going there. Now all of a sudden you have instant credibility, you have their instant attention, and guess what? They listen. So those are the 2 key components to what we do in our movement that really makes a huge difference.
Breaking through is so difficult. So the idea of spark is so wonderful. Going off to ignite your spark. Why is it so important to identify your passion early on?
I'm going to answer that from two perspectives. First of all, I'm a certified life coach, and I work with executives. And I can't tell you how many executives I work with who are maybe going through some kind of a transition and really don't know what they like. They've been in a job for 10, 15 years. This is what they've done. They've built companies and they've reached this great amount of success, but yet they're not happy because they're not fulfilled. So in starting with the spark, I truly believe that if a person does what they love to do all day long, that's not work. I don't consider what I do now, I don't consider it work. I consider it me living in my purpose. And so the backbone of our curriculum is that if kids are inspired and if they see relevancy to finishing an education, then all of a sudden the desire to drop out of school goes away. And most of our students, I wouldn't say all of them, but 40% of them say that they were thinking about when they were going to drop out of school until they get into our program. And once they see the relevancy of completing an education, then they stay in school.
I think the way that you have designed your curriculum, peer-to-peer is so wonderful. I mean, the fact that it's not an adult down command and control dictated process, but rather a peer-to-peer motivating process is just really terrific, so smart. And your curriculum means your graduates help younger students, guide them through the process. How is this model beneficial to the mentor and the mentee?
Well, let me tell you, I see it happen all the time. The mentors benefit because they are now serving and helping to lift somebody else up, right? And then, of course, the mentees benefit because now they have how can I put this? A real live example, not just somebody on TV or somebody they hear on the radio or somebody they listen to music-wise. It's a person that they can touch and feel and sit down and talk to them and have coffee with them or go hang out with them, who are inspiring them every single day to make a change in their life and their mindset. And not to mention, the majority of our students who come through the program are working in their spark for the most part. Now, we have a couple that are, aspiring entertainers. And so we have one right now who's working full-time at Starbucks, but that's so that she can afford to pay for her music work, right? So she can pay for her demos and stuff like that. So you're a 9th grader, a 10th grader, an 11th grader, and your mentor is living in his or her passion every single day. That inspires. That's inspirational.
There seems to be great benefits for everyone in this program that you've created, Yvette. Like I said earlier at the top of the show, 1.3 million students drop out of school every year. That's one student every 26 seconds. How can getting a good education and equal opportunity help curb these statistics?
Well, I will tell you, there are a lot of statistics going around that say if you can lift one student, one person, one youth in a family may be living in generational poverty. If you can lift one student in that family out of impoverished conditions, now the whole family has an opportunity to follow, right? Well, here's what we know. For every year of education a student completes, they have the potential to make $10,000 more every year. So if you figure poverty level right now for a family of 4 is around 24,000 and some change. If I graduate high school, I might make 34,000. If I graduate college with a BABS, I might make 44. If I go to grad school, I might make 54, 64. So there is a direct correlation we know between income and education level. So our theory is the more students we can educate formally, the greater the opportunity that the whole family dynamic can change. Not to mention that one of the keys that we're now integrating into all of our curriculum is financial literacy. Because what we found was you can educate kids and they get the best education, they go get a job, but if they don't know how to spend the money, right, or how to save the money adequately, then, they're still going to be challenged. So we thought that was a real critical component. And so we've recently partnered with SunTrust Bank, and now we're going to be helping all of our students really tighten up with financial literacy, and hopefully it'll help their families as well.
I mean, when you get caught up in a situation where, people want to do well, they're brought up to be good people, they're brought up by good parents, but they have limited resources, a mother who has many children. It's unimaginable the difficulties that these young kids have to overcome. So being there for them, guiding them, giving them that inspiration is critical. How else do you see students benefiting emotionally, for example, or mentally, or just from a conviction and spiritual point of view?
Students who go through the 4-year academy, we have a 100% graduation rate. 98% of those students go on to college or technical or trade school, right? And here's the number that's staggering. 86% of those students are first-generation college students. So what does that say? So what that says is we still have a lot of work to do, because a lot of students coming out of underserved schools and underserved communities, they don't have equal access to education. So I think the long-term implications for all of the students we've served is, I started off talking about transforming mindsets. Well, transforming mindsets is the beginning, I think, of the end of generational poverty. I truly believe that. I've thought that for some time, and now I'm even totally convinced. If you really want to eradicate generational poverty in the United States, we have to look at education. And so from that perspective, with all of our students, with the majority of them being first-generation students to go to college and to graduate, we're changing the whole family dynamic. And now the younger siblings are hopefully inspired to follow in the footsteps of the students that we've served. We have a lot of families where we have, 1 or 2 siblings in our program. And I will tell you, One of the greatest rewards ever was there's a young man from a Milwaukee program who was going to go into the military because he couldn't afford college. And college affordability is a whole nother issue that is truly a deterrent for a lot of the students we work with. So he was going to go in the military, and we asked him to just hold off a couple more days because he'd applied for some scholarships, and we knew that he had been awarded one. So he received a $100,000 4-year scholarship through UNCF, and he went to Howard University. He just graduated. He was number one in his class for 2 years in a row. He graduated. When he graduated, he already had his real estate license and his Series 7 license for investment, and he has a job working for an accounting firm in LA. And here's a gentleman who, if not for our exposure, would have gone to the military. Don't get me wrong, there's nothing wrong with the military, but that was his way of paying for his education. So the fact that through his exposure to our program, he was able to go directly into college, and his younger brother wrote an essay that just brought tears to all of our eyes about his hero. And his hero was his brother, because his brother was in college and doing something with his life. So I don't know that it gets any better than that.
For you, the listeners of Scott Goodson's Uprising Pod, Warby Parker is offering a free 5-day home try-on to give you the opportunity to check out their glasses. To get your home try-on today, go to warbyparkertrial.com/uprising. Again, that's warbyparkertrial.com/uprising for your free 5-day home try-on.
Hey, this is Scott Goodson, and you're listening to the Uprising podcast. Today we're talking with Yvette Cook, who is the CEO of Usher's New Look, who is sparking a movement for education with inner city children and is doing extraordinary things. If you don't know much about the New Look, you need to take a new look at this and engage, sponsor as much as you can. It is a wonderful and valuable organization that's making a great contribution in America today. So this is something I talked about earlier in the show, the role of companies in tackling the bigger issues that we face in society. Clearly, politics can't solve a lot of stuff, and we need companies that have an interest, obviously, to generate profit by providing the best possible products to customers and employment. How should companies and brands care about these benefits and the work that you're doing with the New Look?
Well, you know what, let me start by saying that there are many youth organizations that are doing great work and that are having impact. I always say when you're looking at an organization to get involved with, look at their impact. And so we're one of many. And the reason I think brands should care is because, first of all, we're creating the next generation of workforce. And I like to say to people, look, you're going to pay up front or on the end. And I would much rather pay to educate a child and give them an opportunity to do something positive with their life, give them an opportunity to make some positive contributions to humanity, right? Versus them going in the grocery store and shoplifting because they're hungry. And so many of our kids get into the juvenile system and then graduate to bigger crime out of necessity, out of need, not out of want. The majority of the criminals didn't wake up one morning and go, I think I'm going to go rob somebody. Many of them, not all of them, but many of them do it out of need and necessity. So hopefully there's a domino effect to that. The more people that we can educate that can get a job, the less people that will, shoplift and steal and do horrible things, and the less money we have to spend on jails. And then secondarily, it's future workforce, right? So if I'm Brand X, I think I would want to invest in knowing that there are some students that without support may end up basically doing nothing. Versus if I support the programs and efforts of some organizations that are having impact, I can really help change not only the family dynamics, but now I'm creating a generation of people that are workforce ready for my business and my company.
So these kids that you have, I've met some of them, and they are just amazing. Yvette, you're just your organization, your team, all the people working with you, and all the mentors and the kids are just really, it's a life changer when you get a chance to meet them. Which brands are supporting these kids today?
Oh, yes, we have tons. We have lots of organizations and companies that support us. General Electric is one of our major supporters. Southwest Airlines, they are our official airline partner. Ford has been with us for many, many years, the Ford Fund. Travelers Insurance, Georgia Power, Home Depot, Cricket Wireless, AT&T. SunTrust is huge. We just received close to $1 million from SunTrust to implement financial literacy in all of our programs. Chick-fil-A is a major sponsor of ours. We have a lot of individuals as well, but those are kind of, and then we have some other foundations, the Gordon Parks Foundation, Tyler Perry Foundation. And the reason that it's important to have this vast group of supporters is because we need places for our kids to go and have mentors and places for them to go to say, hey, you know what? I could work here. We have private law firms, accounting firms, and I could go on and on with their sponsors, but those are just some of the top sponsors that we have supporting our work.
So we've talked about how companies are engaging in this movement and why they see it as an important investment for them, both in terms of resources, money, and time. Clearly, it's beneficial. I mean, we're living in a time when consumers, particularly millennials and Gen Z, care as much, if not more, about what the companies are doing to make the world a better place, in addition to what their products do. So many economic benefits for these companies. But what about individual Americans? Why should they join this movement? Why should they support this New Look movement?
Well, if we really want to get back on par, when you think about the history of the United States of America, and you go back to the Constitution and the wording and the language, it was supposed to be the land of equal opportunity for all, right? Well, it's not that right now today. And why I think education is key, I don't think it's the only factor, but I think it's a major contributing factor. And I think that if we really want people to have an opportunity to have a wholesome, joyful life, and that means different things to different people, then to me, the opportunity to receive a proper education should be the right of all Americans. That's just from one perspective. That's my perspective, one way of looking at it. People talk about making America great again. Well, I'm not really sure what that means.
You mentioned Make America Great Again, so it's important that we bring up the Trump administration. What do you think about the current administration, and how do you feel it's affected your organization?
Well, I don't know that we've directly been impacted by this administration because we, don't get a lot of grant dollars per se. But what impacts public education indirectly impacts our organization because we work with students primarily who are in public schools. I don't know how you can make a country great again if you're not investing in education. And if you're not investing in education because you think the system is broken, then I say invest in fixing the system. Invest in looking at innovative and creative ways to educate kids. How do you expect a kid who spends the majority of their waking hours outside of school on the computer, on the internet with headset or earplugs in their ears all day long, how do you expect them to be excited about reading a flat book? I mean, it just doesn't even equate. And then we wonder why we are losing kids. And then we have this enormous amount of kids who we say are ADD, ADHD, or whatever, and we want to pop a pill, but they don't have recess. Really? Why don't they have recess? Well, the insurance, the playground equipment. Really, we expect a kid to stay in school for however many hours they're going now, I guess maybe 5 to 6, and not have any outlet. The system is broken. So what I would like to see this administration do is look for solutions. And I don't think cutting funding is the necessarily correct solution. It saddens me. I've gone into elementary schools where 30% of the kids in the school are homeless. And I say to the teacher, because I'm there trying to read a book to the kids, trying to distribute books to them so they can have a book to take home. And the teacher says, well, what I really need is toothpaste, toothbrush, and some wipes. Because So many of my kids are homeless. They slept on somebody's floor. They slept in a car. They get here, they're tired, they're dirty. They have the same clothes on they had the day before. So before I can teach, I try to give them a little dignity, like let them brush their teeth and wash their face and send them down to the cafeteria to see if there's any, lunch left. It's not that they aren't eligible for free lunch, but they got there late, right? So how do you expect children to learn if they don't have the basic necessities? And so that means we got to deal with homelessness. We have to deal with economic divide. We have to deal with unemployment. And all those things are factors that we have to take into consideration when we look at overhauling education.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. What would this overhaul look like, and what are your hopes for the future of education in America?
It's so interesting. I served on a panel about a week ago, and we were talking about this, and it was really interesting because everybody said, "Oh, technology." Well, I think that the new classrooms are going to be basically digital classrooms. I think that we'll have global classrooms. This is just my prediction, but I think in the next 4 to 6 years, high schools will be online. The majority of colleges will be online. I'm not saying there will be some classrooms, but I think the majority of it will be living out here in this, cloud universe. And, we have all of this digital technology already out there that can connect people from various places. And I also think decision-based learning, I think is going to be important. I think project-based learning, which we see a lot of programs kind of testing that out already, where high school kids basically spend the majority of their day working on real life issues and problems for real life companies, right? Solving them and teaching them and learning them that way. I'm seeing more and more people taking their kids out of school and traveling, whether it's by car, by bus, by caravan, by boat. I even know a family that took their daughters to live in China, and they ended up traveling across Asia for 3 years. They come back and their kids are further ahead from maturity and academically than their classmates are that they left behind. So I think the classroom as we know is going to change.
Yes. Take me to the future. I'm just reading this book, WTF, which is What the Future, and where we're going with the impact of technology and artificial intelligence. And I think in that book, they talk about how education can become a great equalizer. So I think, that's going to make a huge difference, and probably in the short term. But please take me into the future. What would a futuristic classroom look like?
I think a futuristic classroom is going to kind of look like, if you've ever gone to a place where a place of business corporation, they have this room that's kind of like the experiential room. That's what I see. That's what I envision. But kids won't come there every day. I think they'll come there maybe once or twice a week to collaborate and to really have that physical touch, because I think that the isolation of the internet is a problem. So I think that there will be a need for our kids to come together a couple days a week, maybe in this experiential learning center or experiential learning institute, for lack of a better word. But I think for the most part, it's going to be actual project-based and experiential learning. But I just think the traditional learning is going to be turned upside down. And it's got to be interesting. It's got to be relative if you really want to capture a student's attention. So I think the classroom, it'll be partially digital. And then I see these experiential learning institutes, centers, places where kids can go and get together.
And how would we get there from here? How do we move towards this digital classroom, this completely reinvented experimental learning center that you've just talked about?
Well, my opinion, and I have the utmost respect for educators, but I think it's going to be the business community coming together, various cohorts coming together and saying, let's build a model and then test the model out, build models that are sustainable, and then let those models just eventually take over and you transition kids out of this traditional classroom into these cohorts. There are a couple of models that are happening right now. There's one in Chicago. It's not physically off the ground yet, but I think within the next year it will be. And it's completely funded by the private sector, corporations and private individuals. Money's not the issue. The cost per child is not the issue. They needed to come up with a program that was really going to grab students' attention, and that's what they've been working on for the last 2.5 years. We got to blow it up. We got to come up with some models, and then we have to duplicate them. We have to create these sustainable models and then duplicate them all across the country.
It's fascinating to think about the future education in this way. I mean, to get there, the New Look needs your support. The way this thing works is obviously there's been donations from companies, there's been donations from individuals, but it's really up to all of us to make a difference. I did have the pleasure of meeting the Undersecretary General Tahur a couple of years back who told me that educating a girl child is perhaps one of the greatest important things that we need to do in our society, because you've educated a girl child, you actually reduce overpopulation, environmental impact, diseases, many issues that are facing the world today. So I'm a big believer in this whole idea of education. You, as listeners, should engage. If you feel that there's one thing out there that you really want to participate in, I would strongly recommend that you take a look at the New Look and about helping a child. Where can listeners go to learn more about the New Look, Yvette, and the movement that you've created?
Well, we have a pretty robust website, and it is Usher's New Look. So it's Usher's with an S on the end, UShersNewlook.org. And you can also follow us at hashtag Usher's New Look. And we're there. We're everywhere. You know, you can go to YouTube and look at some of the videos, and you can see some of our summits and some of the things that our kids are doing. We have academies in Brooklyn, Milwaukee, Detroit, and Atlanta, but we really serve kids globally.
Yvette, thank you so much. This has been truly remarkable, and your work is remarkable.
The one thing I do want to do is just encourage all of our listeners to do something. I mean, this issue, the youth crisis is here. It's right in front of us. The education crisis is in front of us. And I just urge all the listeners not to sit back and wait for somebody else to make the change, to make a difference, or to make a phone call. Do something to make positive impact on this situation.
I couldn't agree more. Reach out and do something. Get your face out of your apps. Thank you so much for joining us, Yvette. Guys, everyone listening out there, go to the New Look website and check it out. Thank you for joining us on the Uprising Pod today. If you want to find out more about our guests or learn how to create your own movement, please go to scottgoodsonsuprising.com. You can also download the show from iTunes or where other podcasts are curated. The Uprising Pod is executive produced by Frank Olito, produced by Nicola Keneally, and edited by Russell Costanzo, with special help from Melanie Boardman, Karin Drachenberg, Philippa Freeman, Brianna Campbell, Farshad Faroudi, Mark Bruzy, Mark Issam, and Jonathan Weeks. My name is Scott Goodson, and you've been listening to the Uprising Pod, where we can learn about movements and uprisings that are shaping our world, in business, in society, and in between. For more on cultural movements and movement marketing, be sure to pick up a copy of the best-selling book Uprising: How to Build a Brand and Change the World by Sparking Cultural Movements, available on Amazon.com. The music for the Uprising Pod was created by Charles Duchateau. If you have a moment, please do give us a favorable review on iTunes so that our movement moves up the ranks of the iTunes podcast list. And if you have ideas for future shows, please let us know by going to scottgoodsonsuprising.com. Thank you, and speak to you soon.